Right, back to your discussion topics. We're now entering Fans Pulse Lap 2 of episode 15. Another new discussion topic. Sadly, one which has become a bit of a reality, too much of a reality perhaps in recent times. Perhaps it's always been a thing, and the old memory plays tricks, and you can't quite remember all the previous subjects of this. We're talking about young riders retiring from Speedway and why that might be the case. It occurs to me that the underlying reasons could be a variety of things. There could be personal issues, life choices, career changes, moving away from home, whatever it might be. Affordability and lack of opportunities, I think, are two things which are often cited by young riders, and it's probably those two that would be of greater concern. Gents, let's bring you in. Nigel, I'm going to bring you in first on this one. Is it a new concept, Nigel? Has it always been the case that along the way, promising young riders with decent equipment, perhaps decent sponsorship, and absolutely with talent, have chosen to step away from the sport?
Well, Derek, like any job, you've got to serve an apprenticeship. You can't just expect to go in and make a living out of Speedway, which unfortunately a lot seem to think that they should do. You see lads turn up, kids turn up, 2 bikes, big van, fancy bikes, Kevlars. Do they actually need to spend all that money for a start? They see Ty Wuppington, for example. They see Ty turn up at these Grand Prix, then in Sheffield meetings, 2 bikes, 2 or 3 mechanics, big van, and straight away they think that's the way forward. What they don't see is when Ty first came over to England, back to England from Australia with his dad Rob, he lived in a caravan and he run about in an old post office van. Now, how many lads do you see doing that? You've got to serve an apprenticeship. You say lads don't get chances. We won't name no name, but I could name half a dozen what's had chances and not gone on from them, not taking them chances, but also not have the fight to fight back to get that chance. They're not hungry enough, some of them. Sometimes, and I'll get shut down for this one, the fathers are reliving their lives through the son. Unfortunately, that's what happens, and I've seen that happen in Speedway. You've seen it happen on a Sunday afternoon at the football ground, and I don't know. Sometimes it's all too easy for them. Things come too easy and too quick. For all that, there are some good kids about. Yeah. When I'm saying kids, I don't know, your Andrew Rowe. There was a few others, Jordan Jenkins, quite a few, I can't think of the name, but they've all served the time doing it, and now they're sort of starting to come good, aren't they, and mix it with the big lads. Yeah. Dan Thompson on here the other week, such as a level-headed lad with a great head on his shoulders. He's, learning the trade before he goes off to Poland and everywhere, trying to earn the big money. A level-headed lad, he seemed, very nice lad, and good luck to him, and good luck to the other English kids, because we want, like Carlos said, we want them English kids, and they should be allowed to ride at reserve and protected. And so many have been, but we just don't seem to take that chance. Maybe rich parents, the money, they don't have to earn the money maybe to keep them bikes going. Don't have to get a job to keep the bikes going. So it always used to happen. We've all had jobs in Road Speedway. The one you get thrown back at now is you can't get a job. Yes, you can. If you want to make it at Speedway and you have to work and earn a living outside of Speedway to subsidise it, unfortunately, for a year or two, that's how it has to be. Mm-hmm. But, I want the young English kids to come on. like anybody, it'd be great to see full English teams. Nothing against the foreigners, but we want the English kids. We want the English kids making it big time.
Thank you, Nigel. Yeah, some good words, and maybe a very honest appraisal. Maybe they're not hungry enough. Thing is part of the new psyche of the current generation. I don't know. I'm going to sound like an old man by even suggesting that. But off the top of my head, and this was off the top of my head. In recent seasons, we've lost Conor Bailey, Nathan Greaves, Ashton Bowden, Max James, Henry Atkins, to name but 5 young riders who are full of talent, full of promise, and for their own reasons, have chosen to step away from the sport. Stuart, to bring you in a previous episode, not so many weeks ago, we were heaping praise on the youth development system within British Speedway, and we were patting ourselves on the back about Dan Thompson and Joe Thompson and Leon Flint and several other riders who have come through that conveyor belt, and there appears to be a rich conveyor belt of talent, even going down some of the age groups. With retrospect, Stuart, given what we're talking about tonight, were we wrong to heap that praise, or is the odd retiral here or there only something to be expected, really?
No, I don't think so at all, Derek. I think that, obviously Nigel's put a lot of input there in, and I think that you look at, where your surroundings are, who your parents are, who your guidance is. I think nowadays you look at what youngsters have got available to them, social media, the opportunities that you have to look at things on the internet, to do other things in life. When we started racing Speedway, Derek, it was all about Speedway Stars, Speedway Mail. There was no social media. We couldn't wait to get to the track, to see our friends, to see racing at another meeting. But nowadays, we've had so much technology in the world that there's so many things that young kids can do nowadays that if they're not devoted and they don't have the backing from the parents or the guidance, the financial guidance and backing, it's difficult. There's no doubt about it. I think obviously something that was not being mentioned is we went through COVID 5 years ago. Lockdown was a massive burden on a lot of younger kids, teenagers, mental reasons, and I think that's had a bit of an impact on a lot of youngsters as well that are now coming through. Like I say, your Dan Thompsons, your Joe Thompsons, some of the riders that have got the right guidance, the right support round about them, they're never going to lose. It's just keeping the appetite up for Speedway. But when I was racing, Derek, it was just it was the front of my head all the time. There was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, there was no TikTok. I mean, let's be serious. We can sit and watch hours and hours every day of movies, videos, clips, funny things, and we don't even think about Speedway.
Yes.
But when back in the day, I mean, we keep going back to it because we're older, but that was your focus. Your buzz was going to that, whereas now your buzz is going to see a friend and looking at something on the internet. And I think youngsters nowadays are just struggling to focus on one thing. We go to the Speedway, my family go to the rugby, we go to the football, and even in those sectors, those sports, there's people leaving, professionals at 22, 23, 24, 25 even, and again, I think that there's a lot more out there in the world for youngsters nowadays, and unfortunately Speedway's taken a hit with some really good riders over the last few years. And listen, Nigel's mentioned it, but the financial part of it is massive now. I mean, I wasn't sure about today's price of a bike, and then when Carl mentioned it a few episodes ago, I just thought, how? You need 25, 30 grand to even start now. Yeah. And I was fortunate that my father backed me, he backed a lot of riders, but his passion was just to look after people in the sport and, make them better. And nowadays, also the sponsorship nowadays, unless it's a big company, there's not a lot of it out there now, Derek, which is massive to the young riders nowadays.
Thank you, Stuart. A lot of good comments made, and hi Alex, if you're watching, that's Stuart's dad. Carol, to bring you in, I haven't done any research, I haven't done any analysis of some of the reasons that young riders are citing for stepping away from the sport, from retiring prematurely, but in my mind's eye, I suspect that costs and opportunities, or the lack of opportunities, are two of the key ones. What can we do, if anything, to improve the situation in terms of cost and opportunity?
Well, the cost is now always going to be there, isn't it? Everybody's raised the bar with the cost of bikes, engines. You getting engine service regular now costs you, it costs you a lot more money now. And the trouble is, these youngsters have to be on board with what everybody else is doing, because if they're not competitive. But I don't think it's not just a recent thing that this has happened. I go back, like even my time as 16, 17, 18-year-old lad, I was riding with the likes of Sir Alice Cloughton and Ben Howe. They went on to be league champions with Ipswich and disappeared from the sport. There was both, the potential that they had as riders as we was growing up was massive. Stevie Knott, another one from Sheffield, who's at Sheffield, and they just disappeared. For what reason? The opportunities were there back then, so the opportunities are no different. Obviously, it's a little bit harder now. We do get, I think, foreign riders coming over that are not as good as some of our British riders, and they get team places before some of our riders do. And this is where I'll go back to the protected British rider. I think the championship as it is, and I've said this many times through AGMs, the reserves in the championship should be British riders. There should not be any foreign riders riding at reserve in the championship. That's where these guys should be nurtured. They should be prepped for racing at the Premiership, and I think that's the route they need to take. Bring them in at reserve in the championship, protect that reserve berth. We had one, Tom Perry, prime example, come and rode for us. We took a chance on him. Nobody wanted him. We took a chance on him. Started at reserve for us, upped his average to 5.5 points, went into the main body of the team, got injured, come back into our Peterborough team, was awful. He struggled the rest of the season. We had to replace him because his confidence was just gone, and he wasn't the same rider. He rode the next season, only a bit part, not for us, and then disappeared from the sport. So another one that's gone, and why? At the time, the reserves coming into the league at that point were supposed to be protected. And then all of a sudden, there was a rule change that, oh no, because he's upped his average so much, he has to go into the main body of the side. That killed him. That killed his confidence. Mm-hmm. Certainly coming back from an injury, he had to go into the main body of the team. And, and it was so sad to watch that happen to somebody that had so much ability. He didn't have the money, but he had the ability to be a good rider. And we, me as well, because obviously team manager at the time and being part of the BSPA as it was part of the making of that, which makes me feel bad because that should never happen. Yeah. That should never happen to a British rider in his own country. It shouldn't happen. We should be protecting these boys and bringing them on. And I agree with Nigel. A lot of them nowadays, the expectations on their shoulders are it's massive. But we've had riders come into us that have been Conference League riders with 2 bikes, massive van, asking for money that championship number ones were on. And we've just laughed it off, and it's that's where they thought they was at. And when you said, look, that's not where we're at, you're £80 a point at best, that's where you're going to be at. And it was a thank you but no thanks, but that's where we was at as a league, and they come in wanting far too much money, and they're just pricing themselves out of racing.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. I appreciate that. Nigel, just to bring you back in, if you don't mind, Nigel. We're talking more and more about 2026 and the big decisions, big strategy to be agreed, etc. If we do go down the one big league route, there's already some concerns that we're not going to have enough riders And there's rumours. I'm sure we've all heard of 6-man teams or 5-man teams to try and accommodate that. But so, here we are talking about young riders with promise retiring from the sport, stepping away from the sport far too easily, far too prematurely. But on the other hand, we've got a dearth. We haven't got enough riders to fulfil all the team positions that we have. So something's out of sync, Nigel, that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, I mean, you said 6-man teams all only. It's all been tried before. Maybe didn't work. Not to say it won't work again next year, though. Just because it was done once and didn't work doesn't mean to say it couldn't be next year. And I think it would possibly be maybe the way to go. One league, double up the meetings to give everybody more meetings. So we might have, I don't know, what will there be, 13, 14 clubs in the league then? Double it up. Maybe 6-man teams to try and ease the rider situation. And you're going to have to bring the kids in. Bring the English kids in.
Yeah.
Every team must have 2 English kids in. And you're going to lose 1 or 2 of your top stars. But we said before, and even, with British Speedway, let's get back to British Speedway. Let's not look after the rest of the world. Let's try and get our house in order. And maybe 1 league, double up the meetings, 2 home, 2 away, 6-man teams. Would that ease the situation or letting it? Well, it would certainly release 14 riders, wouldn't it, if there's 14 teams? And bring some of the lesser kids in. Glasgow have done it this year, haven't they? They fetched 2 in, haven't they?
Yeah,
Max Perry, is it?
Max Perry and Freddie Hodder, yeah.
Yeah, and they're struggling. They get points now and again, but the experience will be good. The top 5's supposed to be there to carry them. Let them keep going and let them get this experience. And hopefully, they will build on it. And next year, 2 Englishmen in the team, and then whatever else you would afford, possibly. I don't know. Is that one way it could work? Surely it's got to be worth looking at.
Nigel for Prime Minister, Nigel for Chairman of the BSPL. That's the petition I'm going to start, Nigel.
There's too many answers to be answered. I don't know anybody that's got all the answers, do you?
No, that's true. Stuart McDonald, last question to you, and I don't know if this is going to be remotely controversial, but I'm going to ask you to take this one on anyway. So when you look around the clubs in the UK, there are certain clubs who do more than their fair share to try and nurture and bring on new talent through training schools or whatever it might be. So off the top of my head, Scunthorpe do it, Workington, Bellevue, Edinburgh, to name but 4 clubs, have a bit of a youth scene going on. And some of that will be financial, to earn a bit of, to put some money in the coffers, but nonetheless, they invest some time and effort into it. Mm-hmm. Other clubs, off the top of my head, Poole, Ipswich, Glasgow, Redcar, the clubs come along and they don't necessarily put in as much effort currently. And if I'm being unfair to anyone, I do apologise. But my question is, Stuart, should there be some advantage or some inherent gain for the clubs who invest more time and effort into developing young riders than clubs who don't do it?
Absolutely, Derek. I think that the BSPA or the governing bodies have looked at some of these clubs and maybe rewarded them with sort of bigger meetings. But I do think that the clubs that put the effort and time into nurturing these young kids deserve more reward, accolades. Because, the clubs that do it now, obviously Scunthorpe's quite a newish club, but the clubs that have been doing it for years, Derek. Ipswich has never had a training school, but yet Ipswich seem to produce some great riders, some of the other clubs that you've mentioned there that Poole, the financial backing that Poole have, are they not interested because they don't need to? Because let's be serious, we can always look at a sport like football where you've got Manchester United, the class of 92. So, why not have the Scunthorpe team of 26 or the class of 26? Because these clubs that are nurturing these kids, should be given more accolades, rewards, or even more rope in the leagues, because they're supporting the future of British Speedway. And, you know, no doubt about it, we love watching Poole, we love watching Ipswich, Sheffield, but they don't do what some of the clubs up north do. And some of the teams that are out there doing it for the kids definitely deserve more praise and more accolades, 100%.
Thank you, Stuart. Well, so there we are. Maybe a slightly controversial one to end this particular segment on, but if you're watching and you're furiously throwing your fist at us and hot and bothered by what we've been saying, get in touch. You know, cool off, compose yourself, and get in touch and drop us a message.
Derek,
Go on, Nigel.
Thing, you know, we talk about the Conference League, and some riders they cannot adapt when they go up a league. A lot of riders have not been able to go from the Conference League to the second division,
True.
whatever it's called nowadays. A lot of riders struggle to adapt with that.
And it's not something we would want to rush, Nigel, right? We would want to nurture that in some controlled way.
Yeah, I mean, one that springs to mind was Kyle Bickley. Loads of ability, talent, and I think plenty. Well, his bikes were always okay, weren't they?
They were.
Sean in the Conference League, when he went to the league, he didn't do it, and then, you know, I did hear him say they didn't have opportunities, but I think he rode 2 or 3 clubs, didn't he?
He did.
And then finished. I went 2 or 3 clubs with the all wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not saying how Bickley was or wasn't. Possibly could he not adapt to the second division?
Yeah, listen. You know, all it's always been the case. You know, all riders will have their level, right? And in most cases, that level allows them to step into top flight speedway at some point in their career. But other riders, and I'm not going to name any names, but some other riders, their level isn't quite as high as that, and that's just a reality. In the same way that my professional career allows me to get to a certain level and never beyond it. That's just life, Nigel. Life in speedway. So there let's
been there, haven't we? We've all
well, we have all been there. Yeah.
Any further. Myself included, Stuart, Carl. I'm sure we've all got to a level of not being able to push on that bit further.
Absolutely.
That's life, isn't it?
Absolutely. That is life. Speedway and life. So there we are, 360s. We'll draw a close to Fans Pulse Lap 2. Hope you've enjoyed it. Do share your thoughts and views with us. Thank you.